Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video we're going to have 10 tips and tricks for Retribution Paladins in Mythic Plus. Some of these are going to be a little bit obvious if you're more of an advanced player. However, that's not really the point of the video. The point of this video is to help people out who are trying to improve a little bit, whether that's survivability, damage, helpfulness to your group. We're going to cover all of those. We're going to go through some general tips, a few dungeon specific tips for this season, season 3 of the War Within, and then one final general tip that's probably the most important tip, even though it could sound a little bit obvious. So starting off with number 1, we're going to have Bubble Sacrifice. And I'm going to tell you when to use it, because this might seem a little bit obvious if you've played Paladin before. It's something that you might have done before. But when you use your Divine Shield ability, you can also Blessing a Sacrifice somebody, and then not take that damage that they are putting onto you, basically. So you're giving them a damage reduction while not being penalized for it fully yourself. This is something that's been done a long time in this game, but specifically in Mythic Plus, when you should be doing this is when you're noticing somebody struggling. So maybe your healer is struggling to keep people alive. Maybe your healer's struggling to keep themselves alive. That happens a lot in Pugs in Mythic Plus. Or maybe one of your DPS is struggling and not pressing their defensives, right? And so during a big moment where you might want to bubble anyways, right, to save yourself, you could bubble during that big damage event and put your sacrifice on somebody who's struggling, basically. This is going to help your group. It's going to have less deaths in your group. And sometimes you may never need to do this in a whole dungeon run. And that's fine if you don't. But if there's anybody struggling and they die and you could have saved them with sac, then you probably should have, especially if you have bubble ready. I do not recommend beginners just using Blessing a Sacrifice without bubble, just willy-nilly in dungeons, because it will kill you, and deaths are not good for your timer. Yeah, so basically, try to use it with your bubble at first. If you want to explore further down the road with Blessing a Sacrifice, you can do that. But at the beginning, if you're someone who's not using it at all right now, try to use it with your bubble during a big damage event, whether that's on trash or a boss. All right, next, how to use your cooldowns on trash. This is something I'm actually asked a lot, even by some players who are a little bit more experienced. And I can give you a little bit of an answer without being definitive because I don't know what key level, right? Depending on your key level, the percentages of the mobs are going to be different. But people do not use their cooldowns enough. So for Retribution Paladins, we're really good at Mythic Plus because we have Radiant Glory. This turns our 30-second Wake of Ashes into our wings, and every 30 seconds we get wings. So what does that mean? Pretty much every single pull we do in Mythic Plus, we're going to have wings, and we may have multiple casts of it because a pull can take longer as your keys get to higher level. So when you are in a pull, with the current 4 set, so the 4 set for Templar, which if you have 4 set, you should probably be playing Templar. You're going to get 2 Hammer of Lights in a row. So you cast your Wake of Ashes, you get Hammer of Light, and then you can build up Holy Power or use Divine Purpose if you have a proc, and do another Hammer of Light. Now you're also a lot of times going to end up getting like another Hammer of Light in that general same window from your Light's Deliverance stacks. So a lot of times it's going to work out to where you basically have 3 Hammer of Lights you can do in a row. And what I would tell you is, if you are on a trash pull and the mobs are at, like, some of this has to be at your own discretion and knowing how fast they're dying based on your key level, right? But if you can Wake of Ashes and get 3 Hammer of Lights off, then you should probably do it, right? To have max damage. Now, is some of that possibly padding? Yeah, but also you do want the stuff to die faster. You are on a timer, after all. So there is only so much padding that there is. You do want the stuff to die faster. So if you can use your Wake of Ashes, your Hammer of Light, build to another Hammer of Light, and then, account for having a free Hammer of Light from Light's Deliverance, you should use your cooldowns. Use your Wake of Ashes on that. Now, we have other cooldowns that are a little bit longer, like Final Reckoning, Divine Toll, and Divine Hammer. Don't use Divine Hammer when they're only at 30%, because this is a big cooldown, a 2-minute cooldown for us, right? So Divine Hammer, you want to use more to start of a pull, right? So you want to save Divine Hammer for a start, or if mobs are like 80%, something like that. But generally, a start of a pull would be a good time to use Divine Hammer. Obviously, you want to combo as many things together as possible. So I like to keep my Divine Toll synced up with my Final Reckoning, and I like to keep my Divine Hammer synced up with them too on there. So when I use my Divine Hammer, I'm also going to wait for my Divine Toll. I'm going to wait for my Final Reckoning. I'm going to try to sync everything up with my Divine Hammer for absolute max damage. And we're going to try to do that on bigger pulls. But when it comes to the time left, if the mobs are only at like 10%, 20%, you can get 3 Hammer of Lights off, but you might not need to use your Final Reckoning and Divine Toll. That might kill the stuff too fast. So you might save those for the next pull. It might cause you to wait on those cooldowns a little bit. But again, it's kind of at your discretion. Am I going to get value from them? Generally speaking, if you are learning and you don't know, you don't have the discretion in your own head yet to figure it out, just send it and be like, oh, I shouldn't have used my Final Reckoning there. I got like no value out of that. Or I shouldn't have used my Divine Toll there. I got no value out of that. But use it more than you don't use it. A lot of people just sit on their cooldowns. These mobs take forever to die. And since other people are doing that, that just gives you even more value if you actually press yours. All right, another one that's going to be before your damage. So the third tip here, it's going to be to bubble on the first lust pull, or bubble on any lust pull really. So this is a little bit of a cheap thing. You don't need to do this, but when you have a giant pull, maybe you Blade of Justice, maybe you Judgment to build up some holy power, right? Once everything is settled and you're ready to really pop off, you're ready to use your potion, you're ready to use your trinkets, you're ready to pop everything, right? Just go ahead and press your bubble and then DPS for 8 seconds without having to worry about anything. This is small. It might seem a waste of a bubble or something like that, but it's very nice. First of all, it helps your healer. On a giant pull, there's one person they don't have to heal at all for 8 seconds, and all the AoE healing is going to everybody else. So this is it's generally helpful. It's only for 8 seconds, right? But it's still helpful, and you can just DPS freely. That bubble time will allow you to get through all of your cooldowns at least, and then at least now while you're dodging, you're just doing your rotation or whatever. It's a very small thing. You don't need to do it, like I said, but it does help. It's very good, and also there can be random one shots or random threat pulled during a big lust pull at the start, especially if the tank doesn't get good threat on this giant pull. So bubble can help there as well. But it's just generally a nice thing to do, especially on the first pull of the dungeon. If it's a giant pull in Gambit or a giant pull in Echo Dome, some people are doing. You know, just wait till it's all rounded up. Don't use your bubble early. Use your bubble when you're ready to pop off. And, you know, again, this is just to absolutely maximize your damage so you don't have to worry about anything else. That's something you can do there. Another tip, this one's more of a defensive tip here, but it's about cycling your defensive. So, first of all, a lot of people forget that Shield of Vengeance does do damage as well when it explodes. So we want to be using this pretty regularly, right? Even if we don't need to use it, we kind of want to be using this. It does damage, Shield of Vengeance. So the first thing I'm going to use in a pull or on a boss fight when things are looking rough, or if I just need to cycle it for a specific boss, is I'm going to use my Shield of Vengeance first. So that's going to be my first one. A lot of times, at least in pugs, healers tend to use their cooldowns every single one until they don't have one. So I actually use kind of like maybe my weakest one in terms of total damage reduction first, Shield of Vengeance. Then I will cycle on the next damage event, or if it's just a continuous damage event and we are not recovering as a group, then I'll use my Divine Protection. And then I will use my Lay on Hands. Now I didn't mention bubble there because when it comes to the bubble, what I would say for that is if things are really bad, you actually want to use your bubble first. So if things are really, really bad, use your bubble first. But if they aren't, then you kind of want to use your bubble for the emergency, or in the next tip, we're going to talk about something else for maybe a sketchy boss going awry. But for me, let's say it's the second boss in Dawnbreaker. Let's pull that up. Let's say it's the second boss in Dawnbreaker, Anub Ikaj, and he does the ball, the orb that blows up, and he does the AoE. And sometimes those things overlap. Now, the ball you can survive on your own without too big of a deal. The AoE can be really painful, especially for some healers, especially in pug groups. So for the first one, I'll use Shield of Vengeance. For the next one, I'll use Divine Protection. For the next one, I'm going to hover my Lay on Hands if I need to use it. And if I do, I use it. And if not, I don't. And then I will try to cycle back through again. I'm going to try to save my bubble for emergencies. In fact, I will even do a low health Word of Glory on myself as a defensive during that AoE hit. if I need to there. And this is just an example of how to do it. And I'm saving my bubble for a reason. We're going to get to that in the next tip. But if it's really bad, I would actually bubble first. And then you're not going to be able to do this next tip most likely unless it's a really long boss fight. But I would actually bubble first if it's extremely sketchy, just like the Lust Bowl. But if it's not extremely sketchy, I go Shield of Vengeance, Divine Protection, Hover, Lay on Hands if needed. So for the next tip, number 5, securing a boss kill. So at the end of a boss, so let's say a boss is at 10% health and it has a big damage event that happens every so often, and you know there's only one more damage event happening, you can kind of secure the kill yourself. If your tank is good, you definitely can. But if not, you can keep 3 people alive, including yourself. We're going to use our bubble sack here. And so let's say this big damage event is coming out. Maybe it's Swamp Face. Let's do another actual example. Swamp Face in Floodgate here. So let's say he's doing the final one of where the waves are crashing in on you. Everyone's taking mass damage. We're linked together. This final one is happening. The boss is going to die after this one, but it's kind of sketchy, right? Obviously, if things aren't sketchy, you don't have to use anything. But if things are sketchy, you can secure this kill. So let's say the boss is at 10%, 8%, something like that. And he's doing his final one of these. You bubble yourself, sacrifice the healer, and hover Lay on Hands over the tank or the DPS. I would specifically look out for the tank, make sure the tank lives. If the tank is fine, you know, use it on a DPS or whatever. And this would, and a lot of times the tank will be fine, and therefore at least 4 of you survive this really sketchy moment. This is a way to kind of carry a healer through if the healer's struggling, right? And I call it securing a boss kill. A lot of times in my head I'm thinking, okay, I gotta save my bubble because I might need to secure this kill. And I just enter into secure mode. I bubble myself, I sack the healer, and I hover my Lay on Hands. Obviously I'm still doing damage during this, but I'm using globals to do this to make sure we get through this final event to make sure we secure the kill, because there's no bigger time waste in a Mythic Plus dungeon than wiping deep into a boss. So if we're 10% on Swamp Face and we wipe, that's a huge waste of time. Now we have to redo 90% of Swamp Face health. And that's why I try to save my bubble for that, especially on bosses to the very end to secure a kill if my group is struggling. If only I'm struggling, if I'm having a bad dungeon, then that's different. But if my group is struggling, my healer's struggling, I'm going to try to secure that kill every time. Now, I did give some examples from the dungeons, but let's talk about some tips for a few dungeon tips here. So for number 6, we're going to go to Priory of the Sacred Flame. So, on Brawn Pike, you can so for his ability, Castigator's Shield. So this is a small but good one. Now for most dungeons you should have this talented. Let's go to the talents here real quick. You should have Unbound Freedom talented almost all the time. There's really no reason not to take it in Mythic Plus or in Raid or anytime really. Unbound Freedom is really good if you're doing any group content whatsoever. It's also good even if you aren't doing group content. So have that talented. And now let's go back here. So when he casts Castigator's Shield, obviously stick with your group. I would cast Freedom on either my healer or just the slowest person. If the healer has no issue with it whatsoever, I don't even know maybe they're a dragon and they can just hover out of each one. Then the slowest person, maybe a priest, a shadow priest or something, right? Press Freedom on them. It's going to freedom yourself and it's going to get you out of this shield a lot faster. I see some paladins trying to steed out of it, which you obviously can, but Freedom's going to get 2 of you out of it, out of this Castigator's Shield. It's just something that I've seen in there and that helps a lot, is just using Blessing of Freedom on this, because it puts a slow on you, right? And you have to get out of it in time, and it can get really messy in certain groups with this. But Blessing of Freedom this, and put it on somebody else as well, because it's going to put on yourself. You're going to get a speed boost. You're not going to be slowed, and it works out really well. Which is going to lead us to the next tip, which is the same exact boss. So this is a good Ret Paladin boss here, a good Paladin boss. So he does Sacrificial Pyre on this. So it's going to be a circle, and it's going to have some flames in it. There's going to be a set of 3 and a set of 5. Before this boss starts, what you should do is, first of all, you need to have bubble ready for this. So in this particular room, I would try not to use bubble if I can, or I'd only use it on the first pull of the room, how you have to clear the room before the boss spawns. And that way I can have bubble up for this. And then I would tell my group before we pull, I'll clear the first 5 set, or if my bubble's not going to quite be ready, I'll clear the second 5 set. Or if somebody out, like let's say there's a DK, they're like, you know, I'll get the first 5 set. Be like, well, okay, I'll get the second one. You know, play around with your group, but let them know what set of 5 you're going to get. To do this, what you need to do is you need to stick with your group during the Castigator Shield cast. Still, don't go do it right away because the Pyre's probably going to come out first. You're going to go over with your group, Castigator Shield, Freedom, your friend, then run over next to the Pyre, and then you're just going to use your Divine Shield. And then if you're really worried about it, you can do it by just walking pretty easily. But if you're really worried about it, you can then use your steed. Let's say this great, and you just go in and out, in and out, in and out 5 times, soak them all up, and you completely clear that stack for your group. It's extremely helpful. It completely cheeses it, especially at high keys. In higher keys, you need to have a plan for each 5 set. And you covering one of them is extremely good. If the fight's going to be super long because you're in a super high key, or you're just, maybe you're in a low key, but you're with a bunch of friends and you do low damage, and that's fine. Maybe you could even do another set. It's only a 3.5 minute cooldown. Now, bosses lasting that long is sometimes annoying, but it could happen to where you get another 5 set later on in the fight as well, especially if you get the first one. So that's a good one for Prior to the Sacred Flame there. In Ara-Kara, so let's go to Ara-Kara. This one's not a boss though. Ara-Kara, when we get to the final room, so we've killed a new Zet. We go over, we kill the toxic volley person. Now, of course, we might pull more stuff into it, and some of the things we might pull into it are the reinforced drones. They're these tiny little, I don't know what they look like. Almost look like Quillbore. Maybe they are. They're these tiny little Quillbore looking things, and they're called reinforced drones. What they're going to do is they are going to put a debuff on your tank as they hit the tank. So as soon as those are pulled and you start seeing debuffs on your tank, so if you have dispellable debuffs on your frames, you'll see it. If not, even if you don't want to put that on, even if you can't deal with that, as soon as you see those little things pulled, reinforced drones is their name, just go ahead and put your Blessing of Freedom on the tank. It's going to dispel that debuff and make it immune to it while the freedom lasts. So now, after it's over, 17 seconds later, I'm going to put freedom back on the tank again, as long as those mobs are still hitting the tank. If there are reinforced drones up, put Blessing of Freedom on the tank. It's going to clear it out. It's going to make the tank really happy. It's going to make them think you're really smart, and just keep freedoming your tank. Now, if it's a Paladin tank, they might just be doing it to themselves, right? But if not, if they are, put it on them after their freedom runs out, right? You can do that as well. It's just a very useful thing. It's going to make your tank very happy. It makes you look really smart and all that kind of stuff. Next one we're going to talk about is Ecodum Aldani. This is a small one, but this is a new dungeon completely, so I wanted to kind of give a little tip here. On Soulscribe, first of all, the way the mechanic works, because I know a lot of people don't understand that even, but basically it fragments a piece of you and it puts it in danger, and it does like cast Whispers of Fate or something like that, and it puts a fragment of you in danger, right? So what I like to do here, the first one's usually going to be lines, and then it's going to be circles, and then I think it might be lines again, and then it might be like the big intermission one. Now, we technically don't have cooldowns for all of these, in theory, but what I like to do is, I like to Blessing of Freedom, the first line one. You can even press it a little bit early to try to make sure it's up again for another line one. And this is basically just cycling through movement. So our Blessing of Freedom, it's going to help us go grab that first fragment in the lines. Then, when the circles come out, I'm going to Divine Steed and grab it, and then get away so I don't blow up the rest of my group. But I'm going to use my Steed to get in and out really, really quickly. And then I'm going to hope that my freedom is back up for the lines if I pressed it early enough. And it very well maybe. But if not, you can get it without it. You don't have to have freedom up for this. But we want to save a Steed, no matter what, for the final one. And how I do the final one is, so let's say this great again is the boss here, and the mechanic is going to go left to right like this. So left to right is dangerous. I'm standing here. I have a Whisper of Myself here, here, and here, right? So since that one's kind of far away, not close to another one, I'll use my horse and I'll go over here and I'll grab this one. And a lot of times you do have time to go grab the third one, but I'll sit in DPS a little bit while I wait it'll go off, and then I'll go over here and grab this third one, and then I'll start DPSing. And that's how I handle this mechanic. It's very important to grab all your fragments. We aren't the most mobile class in the world, but we do have the tools to handle this and to make sure you never miss a fragment. So that's kind of how I handle this one. It's a bit of a small one, but it is something that I do literally every time, so I thought it was worth sharing. And then the final tip is going to be a very simple one, and it's a little bit silly, but it's just true. And it's just to press your buttons. It is the number one thing, and it sounds dumb to anybody who's a good player. It sounds dumb to anyone who doesn't, think about how a new player might think, but just press your buttons. We talked about this on using our cooldowns at the end of Trash. Pressing our cooldowns to continue to do damage. Use your bubble. Use your Shield of Vengeance. Use your Divine Protection. Use your Blinding Light. Use these buttons that you have. Use your bop if there's physical damage coming, right? We didn't even get into bop because there's not a ton of bop stuff in this dungeon pool. Use your Lay on Hands. We talked about that. Use your Hammer of Justice as a stun, as an interrupt, right? Use your buttons. Use them freely. It's the number one thing. And again, if you think this sounds silly, it's the number one thing if a top player, like let's say a title player, top 1%, top 0.1% player, goes and coaches a new player, they're going to look at their logs and they're going to say, why did you not press this button for 3 minutes? Like, what was going on? They're like, oh, I was saving it for this big pull and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, yeah, but you could have had it for the big pull and still used it 2 times. Press your buttons and learn to, okay, this is when I save it. Instead of saving it and trying to be like, ooh, maybe I could have used it there, but then continuing to save it all the time. Instead, press your buttons and learn, oh, I should have saved that. When it comes to the sacrificial pyre thing in the Brompike room, if you use your bubble right before the boss pull, you go, ooh, I should have saved that there because I need to do this 5-stack of pyre for my group. It would be very helpful if I had bubble here. That's what you should be doing. You should be using it and then learning, oh, don't use it there. Use it everywhere else, but don't use it there. Oh, I use my cooldowns. Oh man, I really need it for this pull now. That was a mistake. Okay, so I'm not going to use my cooldowns here ever, right? Like, you can learn that the dungeon's like a puzzle, right? You can kind of learn where you're going to use stuff. It changes based on route and stuff and based on your group and your speed and stuff. But generally speaking, you can learn when not to use it, but just keep using your cooldowns. Use your Divine Toll, use your Divine Hammer, use your Final Reckoning, use your Bubble, use your Bop, use your Lay on Hands, use your Shield of Vengeance, use your Divine Protection. You should be using these things many times per dungeon. Like, obviously your damage abilities you are using many times, but you should probably be using it even many more than what you are, especially if you're a newer player or you're new to a certain spec or class. Don't be afraid to use your buttons and then prune back if you need to, instead of holding and then wishing you would have used them. That it's always going to be better in the long run, because again, it's on a timer. We aren't saving our cooldowns for next dungeon. This is a timer. We are trying to go fast. We're trying to at least fast enough to time the key. And so using your buttons is a good thing. It's the number one thing that all beginning players, people who are just getting interested, just getting into doing dungeons or raid even, could learn, is to just press their buttons more often and not be afraid to save them. I used to do the same thing. In classic WoW, it was very, not classic, but like vanilla WoW, it was very much told to you by the higher ups that you should save your cooldown, save your cooldown, save your cooldown, save your bubble, save everything, save your retaliation as a warrior, save everything, save. But that's not how this game is played, especially Mythic Plus. We need to be using our buttons. And it wasn't even the best thing to do back then either. It was just like a more cautious atmosphere, I guess. So that's the final tip. A little bit silly, a little bit maybe obvious, but it's very important nonetheless. So hopefully these tips can help you out in your Mythic Plus dungeons, but that'll be it for this one. As always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel. If you're already a subscriber, I encourage you to check out the Patreon. And other than that, everybody, have a good one.